Don't give up. Don't give up. Don't give up. Don't give up your day job.
Yes, people. Welcome to Don't Give Up Your Day Job, the podcast where we get a funny, honest, and sometimes pretty darn deep take on the different jobs people have had to do on the way up to pursuing their dreams. I'm James.
I'm Joey.
And we are
The Bone Brothers.
the Bone Brothers. We have got an incredible guest on today, mate.
One thing first, we ain't got the memo with what we got the uniform on or something.
Well, I got the memo. I delivered it. Where's your dark top?
Yeah, no, sorry. The old tumble dryer broke down yesterday.
Proper brotherly vibes. If there are any fashion sponsors out there, just let us know. We're available.
We definitely need some.
Yeah, available to change at any point. We've got a great guest on today. Sal Montgomery, really looking forward to this one. Another link from the 007 Road to a Million vibe. Shout out 007. Sal is an extreme sports practitioner. She's an expert kayaker. And like a lot of people in that game, she's had this mad journey from doing the thing that she's really passionate about, but at different points struggling to make a living from it, to picking up a load of work in TV, doing health and safety and stuff.
I mean, we never actually had the chance to meet her, did we? She was working with a few of the other teams when we were out there. But we heard her name mentioned, and I think it was Lily, was it, who gave us some information about her?
I think it might have been Laura.
Lily again.
I think it was Laura. Shout out Laura behind the scenes. But yeah, I think Sal works on the Italy leg. So anyone that's seen 007 Road to a Million, we'll talk about it on the podcast. But she did the crane scene with Josh and Kamara,
which was totally epic. I mean, that was one I would have wanted to do, if I'm honest with you. That looked brilliant. And shout out Josh and Kamara, because they smashed that. Well, Kamara did. Sorry, Josh.
But no, really good chat, and really good. Some of her stories are crazy. She's worked a lot with Steve Backshall doing things. Definitely, that first story with him is unbelievable. So
yeah, well, he seems like a great guy, and we'll get into that chat about know how she's met and the stories that she's got with him, and the animals and wildlife that she's encountered along the way.
And I've got to say, one of the things that when we did that show, I was watching those health and safety guys, and I just thought they had the most incredible job. And they do the most incredible thing, keeping people up there. And it's so far out of what we would do.
I mean, that's how we've made it back in one piece, really. Yeah. It's thanks to these guys that all these action-packed adventure shows that you see are really that dangerous.
Yeah.
You could die, like not messing about. You could really hurt yourself, or worse. Every scene that they do, and these guys, spend their life making sure that everyone else is all right.
Yeah,
and
you don't, obviously, that's their role. You don't see it at all on camera, but behind the scenes, they are on point all the time. A lot of them, Sal hasn't personally, but a lot of them come out of the military and so forth. So really looking forward to having had that experience on the show.
It's not like the health and safety that you get when you're in an office about whether you can lift a box. All right, you're not going to put your back out, but it's like, look, guys, if you mess about it, you're going to get hurt.
You're going to die. So yeah. No, they know what they're doing, and now's the time. We're rambling enough. Let's actually speak to the expert around it. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Sal Montgomery.
Don't give up your day job.
Hey, Sal, how you doing?
Hey, yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you guys getting on?
Yeah, we're all pretty decent, I think.
Really well. Lovely to... I know we had a chat a couple of weeks ago, Sal, but lovely to see you again.
Yeah, good to meet both of you for the first time.
So obviously we're on Zoom at the moment. So whereabouts in the world are you at the minute, Sal?
I am currently in Nottingham. I'm just visiting my family and getting ready for a course that I've got here next week. So, lots of studying at the moment.
Every day's a school day, Sal.
Yeah, it seems that way.
Can you tell us about the studies, or is it highly confidential at the moment?
Yeah. It's a mixture of kind of theory and practical, because it's actually a rope access course. So it's 5 days, pretty full on, really intense. Basically going through all the drills with rigging up, specifically for TV for me, but obviously also industrial and climbing and things too. So yeah, it's gonna be good, but I think I'm gonna be quite tired by the end of it.
Fantastic.
I bet. And I mean, obviously, like as James has mentioned, our link is through Road to a Million, that you was part of the safety team. I'd already said that we didn't actually work with you directly because you were in Italy, I think.
Yes.
When we were, where were we at the time?
I think we might have had a little bit of Venice, but we weren't with Sal directly. No.
But yeah, so I mean, the show for us was out of this world. You know, it's obviously we've won a few quid, but you know, it's made us hunger for more. You know, I've done things now that I never thought I would do. And
that's so cool! That's awesome.
It was, you know, and working with the safety guys we worked with, they do such a fantastic job, you know, keeping everyone safe, and to be able to go to the places where you guys go and the things you can do, extremely intense, really, really hard, but you must be having a good time.
Oh, you know what? I'd be lying if I didn't say that I absolutely love it. And yes, as you've probably noticed, it is at times pretty challenging, pretty full on. They definitely keep you busy. And obviously you've got a lot of responsibility, but honestly, it's the dream job. I absolutely love it.
You can tell, just from talking to you, you can tell that already, Sal, which is, considering the theme of this podcast and your own sort of career and the trajectory, it's been a bit here and a little bit there. It's great that you've found that niche that you kind of sit in the pocket of. Just before we go into your backstory, the Road to a Million stuff, what scenes were you doing in Italy?
So I was purely Italy based, and we actually covered a couple of different episodes whilst I was there. So I was fortunate enough to work with 6 contestants in total. And just to give you a bit of an idea of how jam-packed and full-on it was, I think I was there for about 3 weeks, and in that time we did huge crane climbs over big open valleys. We dealt with tarantulas, snakes, disused buildings, smashing up car windscreens, inner city kind of, I was going to say racing, but that wouldn't be safe. We were inner city driving and a bit of off-road driving as well. So literally absolutely loads crammed into just a couple of weeks. So
just a normal day at the office then.
That's what I love about it, is every day is so busy, like so different, and it's got its own challenges, and sometimes you just never even would have expected to be facing what you're facing that day. And I really like that kind of unknown that comes with it.
So, do you know what? One of the great things we learned about being in the TV world briefly, you know, I guess in front of camera, but how many opportunities there are for different people that have had no real aspirations of even working in and around TV. But if you've got a specialist skill or something that is removed of that, you can find yourself living out your dream in a way of travelling and working whilst also doing the thing that you love the most.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think one of the reasons that I appreciate it so much is that I honestly didn't even know that this was a job. I didn't know that you could spend your days doing this and be paid for it. And even if I had known that it was a job, I don't think I ever would have expected that I would be doing it. As you can probably tell, I'm a kind of a squeaky girl from Nottingham. I'm quite short. I'm about 5 foot. Like, I'm not your typical person for doing these kind of roles, I don't think. So that just makes me appreciate it even more so, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, we glitched there a little bit.
A slight glitch, but I got you.
Yeah.
But so just on that note, I mean, you said before, like, you know, the random entries. Going back to the beginning, you always an outdoorsy girl from back in the day, like your upbringing, like Nottingham, quite a built-up area, just like where we're from, you know.
Well, I think I've always been an outdoorsy, kind of adventurous person. But where I am here in Nottingham, although we've got a bit of countryside nearby, I am still very close to the city. And my family, who I absolutely adore and have only supported me from the very beginning, are not outdoorsy in the slightest, are not active, are not adventurous, would hate to do any of the things that I'm doing. But as I said, always supported me. But I think even though I've not had that around me, and that they haven't had those influences from my family and my parents, there's always been something kind of deep-rooted, if that makes sense. Yeah. My family like to remind me that I was a nightmare of a child, learned how to climb really, really young, and drove them all crazy, climbing out of my crib, running off in the supermarket and hiding, and yeah, just being really adventurous and a bit of a pain, to be honest.
So you was getting fully practiced for later life, you know, you was having the training early doors.
Yeah, my poor parents. But I think I've always been very hyperactive, I guess, and energetic, curious, and just wanting this adventure and this challenge, but at times being frustrated because there wasn't always an opportunity to do those kind of things.
And do
Which
you
hence,
think? Do you think that that's because you was a girl that you weren't able to sort of go out there and do maybe the things that generally like boys are allowed to do, or?
maybe a little bit of that, but I think also just didn't know that you could go and do these things. I now love a lot of kind of outdoor sports and some extreme sports as well, but I just didn't know that they were an option, because I think unless you grow up seeing those kind of things and being around it, I just had no idea it existed.
So how did you sort of become into? Because you were in the you were in the Brownies and then you went into the Cubs, right? Is that right? Or something? And found your niche. Yeah.
So because I was a bit of a handful, and obviously had all this annoying energy and frustration, my parents signed me up to every club going possible, and that included doing the whole route, which I know a lot of people do, and it's like rainbows, brownies, guides, and then I got chucked out of the guides. They said,
Punk rock.
Tell us more. Come on, what happened?
Well, they put it very nicely and said that I was a little bit too adventurous. So I actually got, essentially fired from the guides. But that led on to then being enrolled by the Scouts. And the Scouts seemed to embrace adventurous souls. And actually, if anything, it was just encouraged. And I absolutely loved it. And yeah, I think some of my fondest kind of childhood memories are from like scout camp and things where you just get to run around like crazy, do kind of kayaking, climbing, campfire making and things, and just, go and live outdoors a little bit, which I think suited me much better.
It is funny. I mean, shout out to the guides and the Scouts and the Cubs. I was in the Scouts and the Cubs. Never made it into the guides, unfortunately. But
that uniform would have suited you.
Yeah, exactly. But it is quite funny looking back, that because now that wouldn't be allowed. Like, if you wanted to be adventurous, there's no difference between that. But it's quite funny looking back now that you had to go into the Scouts in order to kind of have your passions embraced. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and maybe things are different now, and maybe it's like very particular to the area that I'm in. But yeah, I know at the time, what I loved about the Scouts, particularly as you got a bit older, that you were given that freedom. You had adults around, you had people around if you needed them, but you were also given that freedom to go and explore and go and kind of challenge yourself, which I really loved. And as I say, Scout camp was like a massive highlight of my like childhood.
Brilliant. Did you start getting into kayak? Because kayaking is your main passion, right? Did you start getting into that like in your teens, or like how did that come around?
So the first time I ever tried kayaking was at Scout camp. It would always be in these big, massive boats that were full of holes, so you'd be sinking as you're paddling along. You'd be soaking wet and freezing cold. But to be honest, I absolutely loved it, and I'd always be the first one on the water and the last one off. Absolutely, just 100% wanted to just spend as much time as possible on or in the water. It wasn't actually until several years later that I realised that you could be a kayaker or go kayaking when you weren't a scout or weren't on scout camp.
Oh, wow.
Brilliant.
That's what I mean, like just where I am, sport is just kind of football and netball. No one's heard of kayaking and climbing and things. They'd probably think you're quite strange if you go and do that on your weekends. But funnily enough, not even that far from here, it's a completely different story, because there's a national whitewater sports centre only half an hour away. But again, I was completely oblivious to it. I didn't know that was here. So when I met some people in a job that I was doing at the time who said that they spent their weekends kayaking, but you're not a scout and you're not at scout camp. How are you going kayaking? And it turns out they were going on a very regular basis, half an hour from where I've lived all my life. As soon as I realised that was a thing, I became obsessed with it, to be honest, and my whole life revolved around that sport.
So from obviously you've done that in your sort of past, like downtime and that. So when you've left school and you've gone into your working career, how did that start? Like, what did you do? Was you straight out into your sporty side of stuff, or did you have a normal sort of
Not
job?
quite.
Or
Yeah, not quite. I wish it had been, but I didn't discover kayaking until I was about 18. As I said, I met some people in a job, and that job was a bar job that I was doing.
Right.
I was just saving up money to go to university. And it wasn't until I was starting university that I got back in a kayak and fell in love with it all over again. But I had committed myself to my studies at that point. So I was studying physiotherapy. So I got a weekend job at the water sports centre where I essentially just gave out wetsuits to rafting customers. But it meant that in all my breaks I could go kayaking. And we had a nice little crew of us working there, so we'd be able to skive off and we'd cover for each other, so you could go kayaking more. And that was a way that I managed to kind of do it through university. Because I also obviously needed to study a lot. I was doing physiotherapy, so we were doing a lot of hospital-based placements, like all over the UK. So it was difficult to fit any additional things in, really. Obviously needing to earn whilst I was studying as well. And then when I qualified, I got a job back in Nottingham, which meant I could train again at the weekends and sometimes in the evenings. And then after a year or so of doing that, maybe less actually, maybe more like 6 months, I got onto the GB kayaking team.
really?
Wow.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, so
Amazing.
obviously was super chuffed with that.
Yeah.
And it did mean that I then had to go and have a bit of an awkward conversation with my manager, explaining that I was really enjoying the job, but I didn't know how I would balance doing that and my kayaking. And kayaking's not a particularly well-paid sport. But at that point I thought, well, whatever, this is more important. I'll just live really cheaply. But she
Followed
actually
your passion.
Yeah, but actually she was very understanding and offered me a 0 hours contract, which in general they have a lot of negative kind of comments about those kind of contracts, but for me it was perfect.
I'm with you. I've been a freelancer for, some would say, a freeloader for nearly all of my working life, and for me, you know, people talk about like stability in a job, but as soon as I realised, like, I never knew freelancing was an option.
No, I didn't. Again, it's just not what. Like, if your parents aren't freelancers and things, you don't really know that is an option again, do you?
If you can make it work for you, then you grab it with both hands, and clearly that's what you've done, isn't it? You know what I mean? You've used your 3 hours to train and get yourself into the GB team. So that's hats off to you there.
I always thought I always thought I was a bit of a weirdo, or like, how am I going to fit into this like structured environment, like world of like you have to be full committed into a full-time job or something like that. But it's, you know, when you can make things work for you, and you've already put the work in to become a physiotherapist, which is a lot of hard work in itself. Also, fair play, your university year sounded far more productive than mine. So studying all week and then driving back to Nottingham to work in the Whitewater weekend.
Yeah, well, as I say, it was an obsession more than anything. It was just kind of dealing with a new addiction, I guess.
Yeah, brilliant.
And so once you was on the GB team, was that to be like to compete at the Olympics, or to compete in just like international tournaments? How did that work?
International tournaments. I was competing in something called freestyle kayaking, which is like doing stunts on waves and in kind of whitewater features. And that's not currently in the Olympics. There is talk of it getting into it, but it's more international competitions. And I really enjoyed that. I did a couple of years on the GB team. But what it did help me to realise was actually that this going to a specific competition or training venue and spending numerous weeks there training on the same feature wasn't exactly for me. I enjoyed it, but again, it kind of wasn't enough. A lot of these places were on kind of artificial whitewater courses, and kind of all the wildness was taken away. And through these competitions, I met lots of other paddlers who, in their spare time, would go and paddle actual rivers and go exploring. So I started doing a little bit of that and just absolutely fell for it. I found my thing, and kind of that moment where you find like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life, and that was the new path of the obsession, I guess.
That little light bulb moment.
Yeah.
That's nice when you get that.
It sounds like you're driven as much by the sense of adventure as well as the obviously the love of the sport itself, but not necessarily like the so much the competition aspect. The idea of being out in the wild and seeing the world around you as you do it, right?
Yeah, I think that's it. And especially the more I've done kind of a bit more out in the wilderness is the more that you've got the adrenaline of the whitewater. Quite often it's quite high consequence, quite high risk, very challenging. You've got that, but then you've also got that adrenaline because you know in the back of your mind that it's just you and your team. You're days away from any help, and you guys have to work together as best as possible to keep yourself safe and to make it down the river and to obviously have a good time. And I think that all adds to the overall feeling and adrenaline.
That camaraderie that I saw with the safety teams that we worked with was really like that hit home to me that that you are a team. Everyone has got their important role. Everyone's like a particular cog in that wheel. And I like that. I mean, playing a lot of team sports myself, like to watch these guys doing it at work, and when it runs smoothly, wow. I mean, there was a couple of hairy moments with some of the team, and there was a few fucks thrown here and there and everywhere and that. But in the long run, they got it done. And I mean, look, we got home in one piece. So hats off to all the guys that helped us.
Oh, well, that means a successful trip. If everyone got home safely, that's the sign of a good trip. And if you had a bit of fun at the same time, then that's just perfect.
No, whole admiration. So, I mean, all that time, Sal, you're obviously working, I'm presumably in the NHS as a physio, which is, a very rewarding job, but it's full on, no matter what department you're in, right? And was that something, was being a physiotherapist, was that another passion, or was that more of something that you felt that was what I kind of got into, if you like?
Yeah, I think initially it was a passion, particularly before I found kayaking, because I'd always been very sporty. And I briefly kind of looked down the kind of personal trainer route, but decided actually I think I want to go. I think I surprised everyone when I said I think I want to go to university, because I didn't enjoy school. But I think it was just that kind of that need for a challenge and to take things a bit further.
Yeah, fair play.
And I was pretty sure that I wanted to work in sports physiotherapy, which I did initially. I worked with a few GB teams, and throughout kind of my studies, I was volunteering with local rugby teams and football teams and things. And I really enjoyed it. It was just a selfishness that took over in the end, because I was traveling with all these GB teams for their training camps and competitions and things. And I found myself being really envious of the athletes. It was wow, you're getting paid to train and to travel all over the world. Oh, I'm just here as the physio. But I also got a lot out of it. It was quite far into it that I started to feel that way. And I did enjoy working in the NHS. Again, it was a completely different challenge. And something that was interesting, actually, the more I got into my expedition kayaking, where it can sometimes be quite stressful. There's been a lot of hairy moments. I think each time I went back to my 0 hours contract after a big trip, because it was quite normal for me to work a block of time and work as much as possible, and then go on an expedition, then come back and save up again. Each time I came back, people would always comment on, for one, my energy and kind of positive attitude and things, because it's easy for people that have been in those jobs, particularly in the NHS, which has been a bit full on lately. It's easy for people to get quite negative and in a bit of a slump. So to have someone come back with all this new positive energy was quite appreciated, I think. But also, and people always commented as well on my ability to keep my cool. When things were all kind of hitting the fan and things were not going well, people would always comment on actually how well I kind of stepped up, kind of led the team and just kept my cool. And I honestly think that's because I was thinking, well, we're in the safest place possible. We're surrounded by doctors and medical equipment. If we need the police, they're not far. Like, we've got all this help on hand and all the equipment we could ever need if anything goes wrong. So compared to expedition life, where you're days and days away from anyone, and all you've got is what's inside your kayak. Like, easy.
Yeah, no, you've used your life experience there, haven't you, and taken it into another industry, and yeah, just actually with a cool head. That's great.
And I think, like, you know, that sort of positive mindset that you're going back into work at the NHS with, it is a natural byproduct of the fact that you know that you're going out and doing something that you're truly passionate about with the expeditions. So you there's that balance there. There's that sort of thing, which I think a lot of people, unfortunately, at points don't have in their life. So they can get a little bit bogged down with work. I mean, I've been there myself. I know you have.
Yeah.
You know, people can get a little bit bogged down, and it's always, you know, whenever people feel like they want to do something in life, I just think just try and give it a go in whatever capacity, even if it's just an evening a week or a day at the weekend, like you say, just to give yourself that little bit of balance and keep yourself inspired. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. I've had times where I've kind of been quite bogged down and thought, oh, wow, is this is going to be my life now? And I went back to full time in the NHS during the pandemic, and initially it was that kind of that camaraderie and everyone like kind of getting into all of this together, and there was like some really positive vibes to start with, but as time went on it did become more difficult to stay positive. And for me, because I couldn't go away kayaking at the time, I took up swimming. So I was going and swimming in the sea, not too far from, well, a little bit of away from where I was working. But that really made a difference to me. The days I'd been for a swim before work, you could really tell just my energy and kind of my outlook on the day and things was just completely different if I'd been in the sea that morning. And it
Cold
often
water
meant,
therapy.
yeah, and it often meant getting up out of bed at about 3 a.m. To be able to fit that in, but it was worth it.
With the kayaking expeditions that you're going, this is where like it really turns left field for you. Like you told me before, you didn't even have a TV, so you didn't have any any desire to work in TV. It didn't even register as a career option for you. But then out of nowhere, you're obviously building a little bit of traction, I guess, online or whatever, as a kayaker and doing your expeditions. And then out of nowhere, you get this opportunity, right?
Yeah, as I said, I had absolutely no idea that this was a thing, and if I had known, I didn't think it would be a thing for me. But yeah, I didn't have a TV. I still don't have one. So it's not a world was particularly familiar with, to be honest, or had even really looked into how to work within this industry. But it was because of my kayaking that I ended up working in the role that I do now. And that was because I was going out on expeditions, obviously kind of working as much as I could beforehand, and then going out on these expeditions, which were getting, I guess you could say, more risky each time and a bit more out there. So in terms of kind of wilderness and remoteness, but also the consequence of the rivers and the rapids that I was running. Yeah. I was also running some pretty big waterfalls, which at the time there wasn't loads of girls doing that, so I was, I guess, getting noticed a little bit, which meant that I started doing kind of magazine interviews and bits and bobs like that online. And then just out the blue, I got this phone call from a production company asking me if I would be interested in being part of a kayak team running an unexplored river in Bhutan. And obviously, I was absolutely ecstatic about this opportunity. Not only was I getting to go on this epic adventure, I was also going to be paid for it. Which, it didn't feel real, to be honest. I thought, at one point, I even thought, is someone kind of messing with me here? But
TV can be a beautiful world, can't it?
I mean, do you know what? I absolutely love the fact that, you know, you don't own a TV. You never even, you know, this hasn't dawned on you at all. There's so many people out there that think, oh, they're striving to get on TV and try and do stuff. All you've been doing is doing something you love. Yeah. And because you're that good at it and you've worked so hard at it, someone's headhunted you and said, she's the one we want. She's the girl we need. And, that's great. That's brilliant.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, to be honest, I am very proud of it. And even though that's a few years ago now, I still feel really proud of that. And I think quite often when you're a bit unsure with life and you're not quite sure where you're heading and things, just kind of following your feet and kind of following your passion quite often works out. Because at the time, I didn't really know what I was doing. I kind of kind of dread, like, often I'd be back in the hospital thinking like, well, this is okay, but it's not really what I want to be doing. I want to be outside.
Yeah.
And yeah, just using that kind of role to be able to fund what really made me happy, eventually worked out in what was kind of a dream job.
That sounds amazing. So what was the story around the production then? What happened?
Well, so I was a little bit oblivious at the time because I was just fixated on I'm going on an expedition paid to all places, Bhutan, which I don't know if you know much about this place, but it's a tiny landlocked country that until recent years has been really difficult to access. So this was incredible. And it was going to be leading someone who I thought she'd called Steve Backshall. And I didn't know who this person was, but I scribbled down some notes as she's talking. And it wasn't until afterwards when I called my mum and said, I've just had this really strange phone call. And at the end of it, I mentioned like, yeah, some Steve Backshall guy. And she said, Steve Backshall. I was like, oh yeah, that could have been it, yeah. And obviously I don't have a TV, I don't know. And yes, so he was at the time doing a series called Expedition with Steve Backshall. And it was 10 world first expeditions. And I was going to be on the team where we would be exploring Bhutan's last unexplored river. So the only river in Bhutan that no one had been down before. No one knew what was down there. There was lots of local rumours that it drops off the end of the world. That's why no one had gone, because all the locals thought that it was certain death. And yeah, we were going to be guiding our way down this river, completely supported just by what's in our kayaks, and making a documentary about it. So yeah, it just completely out of the blue, never expected any of it, and it was something that sounded absolutely amazing.
I mean, that's giving me like goosebumps. That is so exciting to do that, to be the first people to go anywhere, you know, like landing on the moon. But this is brilliant. This is brilliant. Like, crack on.
Best thing about it for you though is it was just sort of water off a duck's back, no pun intended. You didn't like you say, you didn't know who Steve Backshall was. Who, you know, he's in his own right. He's a legend of the natural TV world.
And,
you know what I mean?
and now I know him. I know how much of a legend he is, and even more appreciative of that fact that I got to work with him and now consider him a good friend and a regular colleague. But yeah, at the time, I was just completely fixated on this expedition and the adventure. But I think it possibly helped that I was a bit less aware of Steve and the programs and things, because that would have built up pressure. And I already had quite a lot of pressure at that point, because that same week, I'd been told the news that I needed full shoulder reconstruction.
Oh, wow.
So really, if I'd been a sensible person, I would have said right there and then on that phone call, I'm sorry, I can't do it. I need to have shoulder surgery. But obviously I'm not a sensible person in the slightest. And no part of me wanted to deny myself that opportunity. So I kept it quiet and just agreed and said I was all in and would be waiting for more information. Whilst in the background, I was frantically trying to speed up my operation date and get myself ready for this expedition that was actually only a few months away.
Wow. So that was all going on behind
so you
closed
was
doors.
under pressure there then.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, and I didn't actually tell anyone. The only people that knew were my family, my best friend, and my manager. And my whole life just became about getting ready for that expedition. And my manager was a really crucial part of that, because having been at that hospital for quite a while now, and it turns out that she's also a big fan of Steve's, he did what he could to try and help me to reach that ultimate goal. I had contact details for the surgeon and his secretary, who I bombarded with calls. No lie, probably rang her 5 or 6 times a day, every day, asking if there'd been any new cancellations.
Wow.
Which annoyed the hell out of her, obviously. But I didn't care. I was just so desperate, and it paid off in the end, because I got a cancellation.
Was it a kayaking injury, the shoulder, or just?
Yeah. Again, probably a sign of my not being very sensible. I was doing a trick off a waterfall in Chile, and the trick went wrong, unfortunately. and I tore completely through 2 of my rotator cuff muscles. I pulled the cartilage off the bone within the joint itself, and also chipped off some of the bone. So it was a bit of a mess. Hence, they termed it a reconstruction, because they'd be going in there doing a bit of everything and giving it a good kind of clean up inside with all the chips of bone and things.
Didn't act of any sort of deterrent, though, did it? Because you're straight back on it. You don't care.
I was going to say, Sal, as painful as that sounds, if there's any time that you want to get your reconstruction surgery going, it helps that you know the people already from a physiotherapy point of view, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, it's about who you know sometimes, right?
Yeah, and it really was this time, because not only was the surgery sooner than it would have been, I also had access to the therapy gym, and between us, my manager, off the records, very kindly allowed me entrance to the hydro pool out of hours, which she wasn't meant to do. But that was a huge help, because then I could be in there at kind of 6 a.m. every morning before anyone turned up and do my hydrotherapy, which was all like crucial to my improvement, because even after the surgery, I had to be immobilized with a sling around my neck and around my trunk for 6 weeks, day and night. So obviously, once I came out that sling, everything was completely weak and yeah, had no muscle on it whatsoever. So I had a lot of work to do to get from that to being on a world first expedition.
Yeah, I mean that's mad. That's absolute madness that you've managed. The time frame has slotted in perfectly, but the work you must have had to do, that's hats off to you again.
Do you know what? Also, a massive shout out to your former manager as well, because like I think like what we obviously always talk about yourself and ours and other people's passions. We often celebrate the people that have like gone out and do stuff, but in the working world, even physiotherapist for the electricist is a great and very admirable job, but it wasn't necessarily the thing you want to do forever. But the people you're working around are always more often than not, I've found it through my life in jobs, that people are always encouraging of your like passions and your interests and stuff, and will do anything they can to support you on your journey. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I constantly have been surprised by kind of how people will go out their way to help you with your passions. It's always caught me by surprise, and yeah, I've always been very fortunate, because there's been times that things wouldn't have been possible without that additional support and assistance and things. So I'm very, very appreciative. And my manager at Karen Street at the time was a big part of that, as well as the physio gym. So I'm very thankful to them.
And it helps that she had a crush on Steve Backshall, you say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a very good-looking man. He's got a great physique. I've got to be honest with you.
So tell us about that. Getting into the actual, you managed to pull it out of the bag and get over to the expedition, but that was a hairy situation over there with Steve, right? That sort of set you on your way in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah, and the fact that I managed to get myself fit and strong prior to the expedition actually was more important than I'd ever expected, because obviously I was just concentrating on getting myself down the river, being there kind of for the team as required, but I was thinking more about my own performance and whether I'd be able to kayak. But actually, quite early on into the expedition, Steve had an accident, and he was actually drowning on the river.
Really?
Was stuck in a really horrible part of the river. And luckily I managed to paddle back upstream some way, and then climb up on some boulders, pulling my kayak and everything behind me, until eventually I could get near enough level with him. And he was the complete opposite side of the river. It was quite a wide river, but I managed to throw him a rescue rope and pull him out of that situation. And thankfully he was obviously he was very shook up afterwards, but thankfully he survived and was okay. And yeah, and we kind of
You've saved his life.
You literally saved his life.
You've
Let's
literally
not beat around the
saved
bush.
his life.
You literally saved his life. Fair play.
Yeah,
Amazing.
well,
You're an amazing lady.
oh, thank you. Well, I think anyone in that situation, if you, like we said earlier, the camaraderie of kind of expeditions and things, these people, no matter how long or not long you've known them, within hours of being on these trips together, you are each other's friends, family and team, and you're completely reliant on each other. You kind of, you start caring about yourself less and looking out for yourself a lot less, because all your attention is on your team, because you can only complete this together. So I think anyone in that situation would have done the same. But Steve has been very kind to me. He has thanked me on many occasions, kind of publicly and personally, including in his book and on TV interviews and things. So he's definitely shown his appreciation. And
you've worked with him. You've worked with him loads since then, right? That was kind of the beginning of a working relationship and friendship as well.
Yeah. Well, following the accident, I then kind of led the rest of the river, and then the following year, he was going to do series 2. Sorry, and he very, very kindly told the production company that, okay, on series 2, we're going to go to Kamchatka in Russia and run another unexplored river from source to sea, and I want Sal to lead the expedition. So I was kind of upgraded to one of the best experiences of my entire life, and that was a really great way of him showing his appreciation for giving me that opportunity. So.
You've definitely earned your stripes, though, Sal, haven't you? I mean, he wouldn't be here unless it was for you. So
it's not like me or Joey being invited to do it. Like I feel like you were a pretty trustworthy gal by that point. So then by that point, I mean, this is obviously talking about helping Steve and anyone else in TV is great. But by this point, you're actually, getting paid a respectable wage to really, and you're in the TV world essentially. You've got another string to your bow that is all those years of just doing something for your passion, and that is starting to actually pay off in a way you never thought possible before. And did the work come in quite quickly, or is it sporadic?
Well, actually, what I didn't mention, I've always been very, very busy, but sometimes on those trips where I was going away for my personal kayaking, to help fund them and to be able to stay out for longer, I would often work on the river. So particularly in Chile, I did three winter seasons, I think, in Chile, where I would be working with clients, guiding them down the rivers, rescuing them, and just kind of leading people on their kayaking holidays, which I loved. It was, again, really full on, pretty intense, but not the best pay. But it meant that I could be in these amazing places and in my spare time paddle all of these great rivers. So it was great to kind of take that role that I'd already been doing and take it up a notch, because I'm not just leading clients on really well-known commercial runs. I'm now with a team running these completely remote, unexplored rivers as a job. In the past, any time that I'd been doing anything that epic, it was completely on me. I was self-funding it all, organising everything, researching everything, having to deal with the complete ball ache of trying to get all our equipment past customs and into all these different countries and things, and all our visas and things. So then to be able to go and do it as a job and concentrate fully on just being on the river and getting us all down safely was, a dream come true, and one that I definitely didn't expect.
Brilliant. Obviously you went on to work with Steve. What other shows did you find yourself, or locations as well, that really excited you as much as anything else?
So obviously Bhutan and Kamchatka with Steve, and then and it was through that expedition work and through kind of a few close calls that I'd had in the past and things that I realised more and more kind of how much it is all on us, and quite often on my back. I've been in lots of situations where I've had to kind of rescue people out of very unideal situations, and it sometimes has been really, really close to being as bad as it gets. So that kind of drove me to do what I could to try and avoid those situations and to be there for my friends if needed. So I put myself through all the kind of official training and qualifications for like advanced safety and rescue, advanced wilderness medicine, all those kind of things, and like the rope access courses I'm doing and things. It's all to try and be a more useful person on expeditions, on TV work, and also just to be there for my teammates if things go wrong, or if we have to make a new plan. If we need to get out that river and it's a deep canyon, my rope skills will help with that. If we have an injury along the way, my medical courses will help with that. So I'm trying to be as useful to my team as possible. And that led on to kind of more TV work, not always kayaking based, quite often not kayaking based, but there's a bit of water stuff thrown in there, which I always love. But then I've managed to work to Road to a Million. I was in Italy for that. I've been all over the world for wildlife shoots. In particular, a few months ago, I spent 8 weeks in Patagonia
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I've been there myself.
Oh,
What an amazing place.
Absolutely amazing. Just completely out there in the wilderness.
Amazing.
Didn't see anyone other than our team for like 8 weeks, filming some of the most incredible wildlife possible. I have also worked, last year I did a longer shoot where we were in a lot of Europe. We spent a lot of time in Italy, but also Turkey and South Africa. And again, that was a really varied shoot. I was in Panama recently,
Wow.
on an island for probably about 6 weeks, I think, doing a real mixture of activities and challenges and things. And yeah.
Sal, if you ever need anyone to carry the first aid box or anything, just let us know.
Yeah.
We're available.
I mean, just make the tea. I don't mind making a cup of tea. Just give us a shout.
I can definitely put plasters on people and
Yeah,
stuff like
you
that.
know what? No matter what role you're doing in these jobs, it's never boring because you all have to muck in. You end up doing a bit of everything, and no day is ever the same. So you never get bored on these jobs. And one that I've recently worked on, which is just coming out at the moment, is Deal or No Deal Island.
Oh, wow.
All right.
And for that, I was kind of creating challenges for this TV program. And that would involve kind of coming together with the producers and making plans of these challenges and then creating them, then testing them ourselves, which is always good fun, and then bringing in local teams to come and be our kind of test contestants, and then doing them for real for the actual TV show. So that's another completely different element to it, but again, really interesting, really fun. And you get to play around a bit because you get to pretend to be a contestant, because that's the only way of seeing if things are truly safe is by testing them yourself, isn't it? And seeing how they run and how they'll look on screen and then making those adaptations. So yeah, that's another really fun
We've
part.
spoke about this like previously. Like we're all kids at heart, you know what I mean? And you're getting paid to play around and do this crazy stuff. It's a dream. It's a dream job. I mean, it's
You know, it's a common theme of all our guests on the podcast, and you know, you're another person that's like say yes to things, for like, you know, just be out there, have an open mind to like the opportunities that come your way, and that's how you essentially live your own dream, right?
Yeah,
It's not to say it's easy. There's a lot of, you know, it's less, and not just in the nature of your work, but just things don't, you know, you might not have any work on the horizon for a little bit or something.
Yeah, and that's it. It's freelance, and TV world is constantly up and down. But yeah, and quite often the nature of these shoots is everyone absolutely works their butts off. You might only be there for a couple of weeks, but you have so much to achieve in those couple of weeks, and obviously you need to do it safely the whole time. But that often means that you're getting very little sleep every night. You're doing a lot of physical and mental work all day, every day. So the truth is that you're usually quite broken by the end of it. But everyone is so passionate about it that kind of people are accepting of it's going to be really hard. We perhaps won't always get much sleep. It's going to be like there's going to be lots of tough times and uncomfortable times. But people kind of are so passionate about the project that they're willing to do that, and have just kind of accepted that's part of it. You
guys. Honestly, on the show, we said it like openly. You guys put us to shame. I mean, when you're in front of camera, you've got like I know we had to climb a couple of mountains, but the health and safety team did them about 20 times, like just before the cameras are even rolling. Like,
but the whole crew, going back to the camaraderie side of things, you know, the self and safety, the camera guys, they're all working together. A lot of the camera guys we work with could climb as well, and you know they'd done their rope courses and stuff. And James mentioned it, you know, Guy Rich, shout out Rich. When we climbed,
Rich was legend.
Shout out Rich.
It's lovely. When we climbed Sugarloaf, you know, we're dying. Like I'm thinking I can't do this. My arms, I had no strength in my arms at all. And he's scaling it like a mountain goat, you know, and he's got a full camera on him.
Yeah. I reckon not exaggerated to say £100 camera. Like
in weight, definitely.
Like, I mean, he's loving it. We're questioning every aspect of our life while we're doing it, and he'd go up and down, no problem.
And then they climbed it the next day for fun, hungover.
Yeah. It's very inspiring. I found that whole experience. I found it so inspiring to see all of you guys like doing that and just being out and putting you put yourself under the cosh. But it's really like there's a lot more. There's a lot of stuff riding on it, and it's everyone's has a good laugh at that, but also really professional.
Yeah,
like, when it
experts
comes
in
to
the
it.
field, without a doubt.
Do you know what I mean? And I think that's it. I think you want to have we try and carry that into what we're doing. You know, we love having a laugh. We don't take ourselves too seriously and everything. But if you want to do anything slightly outside of the box in life, first thing you've got to do is make sure you're fully dedicated to pushing on with it, essentially. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that is crucial. The teams that I work with over and over again, generally, everyone is really kind of as positive as possible, proactive, happy to muck in. If it's not their job role, if they can be of help, then they will. And quite often that means you're carrying people's equipment for them. You are often making people drinks and food and stuff, because if the director hasn't eaten all day, but the schedule doesn't allow him to go and get a sandwich, then yeah, you might go and grab them some lunch and things, because that's what the production needs at that moment to keep going and to be successful.
Yeah.
And on the note that we made before, out of everyone, I probably admire the camera and sound teams the most, because they're the ones, like you've said, they're often doing all of these really challenging things in less than ideal environments with what is actually really cumbersome kit.
Yeah.
And they're doing it without complaining. They just crack on. And quite often they're not kind of acknowledged for that. And yeah, I've been increasingly impressed with camera and sound teams, particularly in Kamchatka on the expedition with Steve, because we were often having to crawl through bear trails and things to go and scout the river. Constantly singing "Hey Bear," just so you didn't take one by surprise. And you're thinking, like, this is really hard, or like it's uncomfortable, I'm getting scratched up, I'm tired, what if a bear comes, all these things, and I haven't eaten for hours. And then you look behind you.
Sal, I was thinking exactly the same thing as I walked to the studio in suburban South London this morning. I was just...
But yeah,
where's that bear?
Behind you, and there's a camera up, crawling through the trail with you, with all this equipment with them, obviously not complaining, and they just crack on with it. It's so impressive. And yeah, I don't think they get enough shout outs sometimes.
Shout out all the sound and well, shout out all of you
Hats
crews.
off to the sound crew.
Sal, it's been so wonderful to speak to you. Again, the thing that show's done for us is not only helping us create this podcast, but just giving us the inspiration to speak to people doing all sorts of different things like yourself. And it's been such a great honour to get a little bit more insight into your own journey and where you're going next. Like, do you have any final sort of nugget of advice for anyone that just might be looking to do something like what you do, or even like just make a bit of a change in their life, follow their passion, essentially?
Yeah, and I think particularly most people I've worked with in this kind of profession, and I've worked with a real range of people, the people who seem to love it the most get asked back time and time again and are an absolute joy to work with. Like, you look forward to working with these people, are the people that got into it through a passion. So more often than not, they're climbers, and they're people that were dedicating their lives to climbing, and along the route kind of found these professions and now get to adapt it to different work. And they're quite often the people that are just so passionate and energetic and positive and things. And that's not to say that everyone has to be a professional sports person, but I think quite often, particularly when I'm kind of unsure where I'm heading in life, just following your dreams and your passion, what drives you, can lead to some paths that you never knew existed, and they might be really awesome. So I think, just going for it, doing what makes you happy, what drives you, and saying yes to opportunities. Like, there's lots of things that I perhaps was a bit unsure about and questioned, but said yes to and gave it a go, and actually led on to something even more amazing. So I think just go for it.
If you're lucky enough to have a passion or even an interest in something, pursue it as much as you can, because it's going to make life a lot better for you, isn't it?
So at the end of every episode, we always ask the same question to our guest. You know, obviously, Road to 1 Million. I chose James as my partner to get involved with the activities and all that. So we'd like to know, if you was to do Road to 1 Million, who would you choose as your partner?
Ooh, well, There'd be a couple of choices, I think. One of which would be my best friend, Nikki Beebe. She is very good at keeping me grounded, and when I'm having a crazy moment, she kind of brings me back to earth. She's very logical, a lot more sensible than I am. And then another possibility would be Helen Glover, who is actually, she's Steve's wife, but she also is an Olympic gold medalist in rowing.
Yes.
And one of the, and she's an absolute legend. I'm lucky enough to say that she's a friend of mine. And she just continues to inspire myself and everyone around her with how much she dedicates herself to things and how hardworking she is and how goal-driven she is. So I think she'd be amazing to team up with.
Yeah.
The only problem is
tell
that
you
we
what.
probably don't want to do the adventures and challenges, so we'd perhaps fall out a little bit about that. But
I tell you what, you put me and Joey to shame. You two, wouldn't you?
The two of you would show us how it's done, I think.
Like, do you know what? I know. I've heard of Helen Glover. I had no idea that her and Steve were married. That is a power couple and a half. Isn't it?
Together they're
play.
an awesome team.
Brilliant. Shout out Steve and Helen. Great, loving your work. Sal, it's been such an honour to speak to you. We'll certainly catch up again soon at some point. But in the meantime, we just want to thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Sal.
Thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Lovely. It's been great. I'm in awe. I'm in awe of you, of what you've been up to. It's brilliant.
Oh, thank you very much.
Joey and I are going to go out the studio and climb a fence right now.
Well, be careful.
Yeah. Not into someone's garden. It'll be a public fence. All right, Sal. So thanks so much. Wishing you all the best, and listen, good luck with your exams and everything that you're going to be doing on the course.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. All the best, Sal.
Bye-bye.
Catch up soon.
Bye
Cheers.
now. Bye.
Don't give up your day job.
What an absolutely incredible lady.
What a lady. She I mean, I am in absolute awe of her. As I just said, I love adventure, yeah. I mean, I'm just gutted I haven't done more of it when I was younger, but she's just living the best life.
But do you know, I mean, but she, to be fair to her though, like it's best life combined with some seriously hairy
proper
situations.
hard work.
But I
Hard
see
work.
things like that. Obviously, we got it on the show anyway, but I just see things like that. I just feel inspired.
Yeah.
Like, not saying, listen, I'm not saying we're going to be quite as extreme as Sal, but it's like there's so many opportunities for all of us in this world to go out and do stuff that's just random.
Yeah.
And have them experiences. You know what I mean?
And on that note,
don't give up your day job.
don't give up your day job. See you next time.
Cheers, guys.
Don't give up.